This is Pastor Unpacked. Real talk, real faith, real growth. Let's break down life with Jesus. Come on, church, let's unpack it.
Do we love politics more than the gospel? Your party didn't save you, Jesus did. Welcome to Pastor Unpacked. I'm Pastor Bob McKay from Wadsworth Church Nazarene with Scott Baumgartner, and we're tackling the greatest discussion you could ever have.
You're really going going right in it, aren't you, Pastor?
We're talking about politics and the gospel, and so it's an amazing topic. It's a hard topic, but it's a part of our lives. And the question is, as believers, where's it supposed to be in our life? How high priority is it in our life? And how do we handle politics when it comes down to that Jesus is the answer, and not our president,
Right.
not our government. It's not the answer.
Right.
It's part of the answer, but it's not the answer. It's not the answer to joy, to peace, and to love. It's not the answer, but it's part of it. So Romans 13 says this. I just want to read the very first line before we get into more of it. And if people won't like this, what it says, and he's talking to believers here, and it says, everyone must submit to your governing authorities.
Ooh, man, that's a topic.
So it's just realizing they have a role in your life. They have a role in something that's bigger than you, that we don't understand.
Right.
I try to relate it to being a pastor, meaning not many people want to be in my shoes.
Yeah.
The church has a setup, it has a board, right? It has church members. And at the end of the day, not many want to be in my shoes. But they all have opinions.
They do.
They all think we should go this way or that way, but nobody wants to pull the trigger
Right.
and make that final decision. And they want to help in that decision, which is great. Like, I want to hear people's perspectives, but sometimes I got to make that hard decision. And
Because there's always a winner and a loser.
yeah, we'll find out if it's wrong or right.
Right.
But if you do it correctly, if I communicate with everybody and I'm getting everybody's thoughts, and then I'm praying, and then I can effectively make the best decision I can. And so as we look at the presidency, right? Nobody wants it.
No.
Nobody wants to wake up every day with a whole book of what's going on around the world,
Right.
and say, do we want to? Here's what you got to do, Mr. President. Here's what things you got to think about, Mr. President. And then you got a whole nother book of, here's your schedule for the day. Here's what you got to do. And then stuff happens, and this, but he's got to have a great team. He's got to look for the whole government to help. He's got to look for the states to help. Like, we're all part of this massive setup that it's not worth fighting with your neighbor,
Right.
because it's not going to get anywhere.
Exactly. Yep.
And so a lot of families don't talk because of governmental issues when it doesn't affect this
Right.
part. It's media, it's media driven. We're consumed with it. We watch it, and it just says like it becomes cooler sitting by the cooler talking about it, and so. But it is a part of our life,
Right.
and Jesus says, look, we have to submit, and it says, for all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. And so it's like, man, it's so we can't understand it.
Right.
Because it takes a special kind of person. Even the person's not a believer, the Lord must be using them.
Yeah.
So anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and they will be punished. For the authorities do not strike fear in people who are doing right. And I think it's a key. If you're doing right,
You have nothing to worry
well, I
about.
mean, and we're going to come to why that is. But in those who are doing wrong, would you like to live without fear of your authorities? Do what is right, and they will honor you. So it's just amazing. So I pulled up some history here for us to talk through. So the Democratic Party started in 1828. Okay. And here was their three beliefs, three things they were focusing on was represent ordinary citizens. Okay, that was their limit federal government power. Okay, and support states and rights. So support states' rights.
Okay.
That sounds good.
That's pretty good.
Right? All right, that's good.
That's a good
So
thing.
20 years later, that's all we had was Democratic. 20 years later, 1854, the Republicans started. So we got the stop of the spread of slavery, preserve the Union, which meant trying to keep, I guess back then they were talking about splitting up the USA into two countries. And so the Republicans were trying to keep us one country. And then support national economic growth.
Which means working together.
So so a lot of these are mixed, right? Some of these now are Democratic thoughts and some of these are Republican thoughts. But you can see that this here was to create harmony, to make us better. That was the beginning. So the question is should faith be in politics? And it's so extremely difficult right now.
Yeah.
But our founding fathers was all about faith, was all about doing things through what the Bible said on how to love people and care for people. And I looked at the separated church or state to see what that meant. And basically what that meant was the church was allowed to speak into the politics, but the politics was not allowed to control the church. Like, we're going to let the church be the church, and we're not going to tell them what they can and can't do. For all religions, anything of faith, we're not going to. But they were saying, but faith pushes us to be better. And George Washington said this when he was leaving office. He said, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports.
Wow.
So it's like, we got to have it to make the right decisions in the political world.
Yeah.
We got to have the Lord. We got to have His Word. We got to have His direction. We got to have Him to help us handle these hard, difficult topics. And then John Adams, who in 1798 said this, and this is even more into it. And he said, our Constitution was made only for moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other.
Wow.
It's,
That's deep.
and but that's our problem today. Is we've separated the church from the state, the church from the government, and said, you stay. The government saying, you stay in this lane, and we got this over here, and they're trying to make moral decisions for people when there's no.
They don't have any morality.
There's no morality. There's no support.
Right.
There's no accountability. They're just whatever works.
Yep.
And that's why he said, so think about how people look through the Constitution. They're looking through the Constitution of a lens of not faith.
Right.
And what's John Adams saying? He said, if it's only written for those who are moral and religious people.
Yep.
It's like, oh,
Boy.
This is our founding. So you may hate me, Pastor Bob, bringing this up, but this is our founding fathers who started this country, who believed in Jesus and said, we want a new way to live in a new country. Here's what we want to do. And now we've gone way away from that to say, you can love Jesus, but he don't need to be in our decision making.
Yeah.
But
it's on our currency. I mean, it's everywhere.
Because if we're honest, Jesus says it says in Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything. So there's a time for war. There's a time for peace. Mm-hmm. You know, all those hard things. There's a time for everything. So what does that mean? Jesus wants to be in the midst of all that stuff.
Yep.
Because there's wars in the Old Testament, and all kinds of stuff happening. It all leads to something, right?
Yep.
And we're not going to know what all this stuff leads to until we activate faith in it. And man, that's what
boom.
People don't.
Yep.
People want to separate it, and it's hard. I mean, I'm not saying I got the answers of what that looks like, but man, it's. You know, we have a part of it. We have a part in it by who we elect, who we vote for.
Yeah.
But all of American people are not Christians.
Right. And
so we got this battle of they want who they want, we want who we want, and how does it go together? And so we have to do what the Lord says. Everyone must submit to governing authorities. And so, like, I'll never bash a president because I understand. I get a little glimpse of what he's going through as a pastor, and he's got to make hard decisions. He's got all kinds of people putting stuff in his head, and he's got to cycle through that. And so, every president that I've been under in my 46 years has I'm not ever bashed. I'm not going to bash. Every president has somehow helped me and my family through the years. And there's not going to be a perfect president.
No.
There's not going to be a perfect mayor. I mean, it's not going to be. But there can be faithful ones.
Yeah.
There could be ones that trust in the Lord. And man, that's so we just need to pray for people to raise up to want to be a leader. Because
Right.
I wonder how many are called to do it, but just scared.
Right.
You know, or don't have the funds. You don't have all these things to raise up.
And we need to be praying for our leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we disagree with them, we have to pray that maybe that God can change their heart.
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't know why people are in power at those times,
Right.
but it's just trusting in the Lord and because like some presidents communicate better with other countries than other presidents, you know. So the Lord uses unique people to handle situations at the right times.
Yep.
But man, we just have this funnel of news outlets that want to tell us what they think we need to hear instead of everything. And so it makes it hard for us to navigate what life really looks like. And so when it comes down to it, we shouldn't love politics more than Jesus.
Right.
If our morals are right, if we're living for Him, then the politics will change.
Right.
That's when it changes, is when we say, this is the way that we're going to do things. This is the way we're going to do because of what Jesus taught us and did. But not everybody's a believer.
Right.
And so how do you handle that?
Yeah, and how do you handle, people want to just take faith out of everything.
Yeah.
And the moral issues dictate a lot of what our politics is. If there's one moral issue, that's like a no-go for somebody not to elect somebody or vote for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Politics is a very huge. It interjects in every part of our life, and the president didn't die to save me. Jesus did.
Like I looked at Rome, like why did Rome fall? I looked at all that, and it's all the stuff we're dealing with in America. Mm-hmm. You know, and I was like, man, it's just. But we've been on the edge forever. Like we're on the edge, and we've been on the edge for decades.
Yep.
So how are we not going over the cliff? I think it's the believers.
Yeah.
I think it's the ones that are living it day to day. There's a lot of good happening in the world.
Yeah.
We don't hear it, but there's a lot of good.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing too. And this is where Jesus is so personable that we forget this part, that we're not the only government. All these countries got governments, and they all run different ways. And so this verse is not just to America, mm-hmm. right? It's to every government in the world. Imagine Jesus trying to infiltrate all these different governments. And man, it's so big that we can't comprehend it.
That's crazy. Yeah. Just now you saying that. Yeah. It's like how many countries are there? 200 and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we're just not the only ones. You know, we think we are a big power, but man, are we bigger than China?
Yeah.
Whew, I don't know, right? If they told us to pay our debts today, could we?
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, and so it's just, man, it's... So when it comes to... Because every time people try to get political with me, you know, I'm like, what's the point? What's the point of this? You know, and what's Jesus doing? What good's happening in your life? You know, I'm changing on them. Like,
right.
How bad is your life right now? You know, we're all paying the same amount. The gas price, right?
Right. Exactly.
It goes up and down every day. So we're dealing with it every day, right?
Are you working? Are you healthy?
I'm serious when I say, like 9/11. You know, President Bush being on that rock pile. Mm-hmm. I couldn't see any other president doing that.
Right.
You know, I don't care what happened before and after. America needed that moment.
Yeah.
I believe God put him there for that moment to say, we're with you.
Yeah.
You know, and that country bumpkin personality was what the country needed.
Right.
Now after that, whatever happens,
yeah.
right? But everything must submit to the governing authorities. You know, for me, Obama, 2008, when the economy hit the fan, I was a part of that.
Yeah.
Lost my job for 2 years, couldn't find nothing. Guess what Obama did for me? Guess what he did for my family? I drew unemployment for 2 years. He kept extending me every 16, 8 weeks, like it just kept coming. Yeah. He had to, but so bad, I could not find a job. They'd had job fairs at the mall, and it'd be wrapped around the mall 6 times of people trying to get jobs in 08 to 010. I mean, so I'm thankful that he did that. He was part of that, right? That affected me. And so we can all go down the line and say, this helped me. Mm-hmm. This is how the government helped me.
Right.
And that's what they're supposed to be there to partner with the church to help. And I think a lot of times that's what we've done. We look to politics more than the church.
Right.
And the church is slipping away from their duties, you know, to helping people better.
Yeah, the church is definitely kind of more in the shadows, it seems like. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe because faith is such a polarizing thing more than politics, or politics is more front and center.
Well, we started, there's great programs got started, and so, yeah, it's a weird thing, you know, that the church is I don't think it's the people viewing the church. I think it's the church getting out of the people business.
Yeah.
Because like me right now as a church, we got this nice facility, and I'm in the midst of praying, Lord, how do you want to use this facility in the community?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of churches that you go by through the week and there's no cars. There's nothing going on in the parking lots. It's the same thing for ours. During the day, it's me, my car, sitting there. And so it's like, but it's doing things that will help the community, not just to do things, so navigating what that looks like. And it changes all the time. And that's what's hard for the church.
Yeah.
That's what's hard for me. That's what's hard for pastors is culture changes, things change. And so we got to adapt. All right, do we need to tweak this now? Our church was known for upward basketball. Mm-hmm. They did it for 7 years here. And upward basketball was huge back in 2000 because my kids did. Ethan did it back in 2000 all over the country. The churches did upward basketball. Now, you don't hear about it much.
Yeah.
But guess what was not there yet back in 2000? Cell phones. The internet wasn't huge now. Online gaming wasn't huge then. And so it was easier to get kids together because they were still outside riding bicycles.
Right.
When technology changed. Now we got to fight against, not fight, but now we're competing against
getting them out of the house.
What they're doing for recreation. And so now it's like, well, what do we got to do now? And man, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Because you make that decision, we make that decision now, and 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we got to adjust again, possibly, or add to. And so that's the fun part. That's the fun part of figuring out how the church helps the community. But it's just being willing. So we're trying to get tied into everybody to see how we can, what's our lane to be there for people. So it's partnering with officials. Like I'm having meetings, like all the nonprofits and churches are meeting with the mayor every quarter to come with ideas to help our community. That's politics partnering with the church.
Right.
So it's great, right? That's how it should be. And so imagine if we got all levels to do that, to say how can we work together instead of you're wrong, I'm right, and nothing's ever going to get done.
Right.
And the funny thing about politics is if Trump was a Democrat, they would love him, and the Republicans would hate him.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
That's the polarization right there.
And so because he decided what he was going to go. He didn't know what he was going to do. Either one. He made a decision. And so it's just funny how he's our guy.
Right.
He's not our guy.
He's not our guy, right?
And so the next election, the same thing's going to happen. Like the tide will change on who gets elected, on how the media looks at him.
Yep.
If he's a Republican, Fox News is all about him. If he's a Democrat, CNN, NBC, it's all about him. Like we don't get the neutral part.
Right.
Like here's what's really going on in our country. Here's what we got to work on. And here's our leader. Here's what he's trying to do. Here's where he's not. Here's where he's struggling with. But here's what he's trying to work out. Instead of getting that, we're like, he's the best. He's the worst.
Right.
And
here's a poll that tells you yes or no.
And not, man, here's what's good that he's done.
Right.
And here's what we don't like.
Yep.
But we don't really get that full story. We never get that full story.
Yeah.
I tell people that are frustrated with Trump, when his first election, when Trump got in there, he saved the coal mines. And so it hit my family because I remember my dad, right before the election, he got a letter from the union saying they're getting ready to close all the mines. And they're getting ready to stop your benefits, your health insurance, and your pay. We're getting ready to stop all that. It's getting ready to. Trump got in there, and he was no. So he kept the mines open. He talked with UAW. They kept. So he's got all that stuff. And I'm like, I don't care if you love him or hate him, but he helped my family. He
Right.
helped my parents. He helped my dad, and he helped all my relatives. And in Virginia, the reason he won Virginia that first year was because of the promises of coal mines. And I remember going to play in a golf tournament in the Bukus of Virginia, okay? And there was a center there that we met. We were playing golf for, and a guy told me there that since the election, because this was like 2 years after the election that we went up there and played, he said Virginia here, they've opened up 70 coal mines all through this valley since the election. So it turned it all around. So, like, I'm telling you, every president has helped somebody.
Right.
Now, I get it. Some have hurt and don't like. I get it. I've failed people as a pastor. I've helped people, so the same thing could be said about me.
Sure.
But I'm trying. And
Right.
that's the biggest thing we want from people in politics. Please try your best. Please get along, right?
Yeah.
Please get along. You're better together, and then
Give them grace.
yeah.
Got to give each other grace.
And Galatians 5 says this, 22, and this is the key that people need to hear. By the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. So we got to add that. There's no law to love and to embrace and to work out. And if we do that, politics will look different through everybody's eyes.
Right.
If we realize that Jesus is above all that.
Yeah.
So give Jesus a chance in your politics.
This is Pastor Unpacked. Real talk, real faith, real growth. Let's break down life with Jesus. Come on, church, let's unpack it.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.